What's up? Seth Mosley here on the Made It in Music podcast. We've got my good buddy Matt Hein.
Hey-o.
What's up, my friend? What is up, my friend?
Pumped.
It's going to be a good
We're here.
Good time. You're here, and we've got a great episode. I've got a little intro for you, but first, I wanted to highlight one great free resource that we have at Full Circle Music, and that's our YouTube channel. Not only can you find all of the videos and the podcasts there, but you can also find content about songwriting, production, the music business, getting started in the music industry, and so much more. All the goods. So we're working on creating a ton of awesome content right here, right now, in this room to serve you as a musician. So head over to youtube.com/officialfcmusic, as in Full Circle Music, to check it out.
Do it.
So we've got Matt Hein. Our guest today is Matt Hein. Matt is a founding member of pop worship band I Am They. I Am They has played alongside Matthew West, MercyMe, Crowder, and others alike. And in 2015, I Am They received a Dove Award nomination for New Artist of the Year. Their singles Scars hit number 2 on the radio charts, and My Feet Are on the Rock and From the Day both hit top 15 and top 10 respectively. Most recently, I've been working with them in the studio on their newest record, Faithful God, which you can pre-order if you go to iamthey.com.
Oh, man.
Do that. I'm so excited for this interview and to see what wisdom Matt has for us today. So,
Whew.
Thanks for being here.
That was glorious, man. Thank you so much. That's the best intro I've ever had.
Hey, well, I've been as a past touring musician, I've been introduced in all of the wrong ways.
Yeah.
That's actually a great way to start. What's been like the worst wrong band name introduction?
Okay, before I Am They ever existed, we were called Solomon's Porch.
Ooh, that's
so
a tough one.
yeah, so our band, we never intended on being a band in the beginning, and so we started this worship night. That worship night turned into kind of this worship ministry back home. We called it Solomon's Porch, and there was this band that came that was opening for us or whatever as things started to grow or whatnot. And they called us Salmon's Porch, and
that doesn't even
make
sense.
They were just laughing, it was a big joke. They got everybody we just felt like
Salmon's
they completely
Porch.
bashed us. But yeah, and then we're obviously now leading the league in pronouns with I Am They.
Yep.
So it's I am we, I am who, you are they, we are who, what? We always get all that.
It's like Dr. Seuss.
Exactly, yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Hey,
we did it to ourselves.
I know you pretty well through working on records together, and we've had a blast getting to know you. But I want to hear your backstory. How did you get started in music?
Man, I was so I grew up playing my music. Both my parents are musicians or whatnot. So I grew up in a very musical household. Drums was my first instrument, and I grew up my first drum set, I was playing encyclopedias. I got some sticks, and my mom would put out the encyclopedias, and the thicker encyclopedia was the lower, tone. I'd lay those out next to my mom's piano, and she would just always have a devotional every day, and she'd include me in that. And so I'd just hang out, and she would, whatever scripture she was reading that day, she would put to music. And so we'd always end up jamming together. So anyway, I grew up playing drums.
So she was kind of writing songs.
Yeah,
essentially.
Totally. So that was my first connection to music, and songwriting and all that. But drums, it's kind of hard to write songs on drums. So I found guitar actually in a youth group. I was 15. My buddies weren't on the basketball court, and that was what I do every week. So I show up to youth group to play basketball with the boys, and nobody's on the court. So I go inside. Everybody's got a guitar, and our youth pastor's teaching them guitar, and they had an extra guitar, and they're like, Matt, jump in. So nobody to play basketball with. I grabbed a guitar, and I think the first song I ever learned was that old song, Holiness. Holiness, holiness, yeah. So, but man, I took that home and the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with the 3 chords on it.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love, man. Really, because I could songwrite. I started singing and writing songs, terrible songs.
Much easier to write on a guitar than it is on drums. That's a very good point. But
yeah,
I will say you having the rhythmic foundation allows you to be a really great acoustic player now. So
man, anybody awesome. I've do music lessons or whatever, I've always said, like, if you could start on drums or piano, I think, like, that just frees you up. Like, coordination-wise, brain-wise, rhythmically, all of that stuff, I think is, it definitely helped.
Well, we just celebrated my 6-year-old and 3-year-old just had their birthdays, and we just got them a drum set for their birthday.
Nice.
Which is
it an acoustic one, or is it like the electric?
It's not electric. It's full on.
Wow, you are asking for it.
I know. The trick is if you get
gone with the encyclopedias, man.
Here's the trick, though. If you get a drum set, you put it in the garage, which is not attached to your house. It is attached to my mother-in-law's house, so if my mother-in-law is watching this, sorry. She has signed off on it, though. She said, hey, I'm excited to hear her playing drums. So
nice.
She woke up at 6:25 this morning saying, man, can we go play drums? Can we go play drums? Like, you're probably going to wake everybody up. And
so if you can build your kids their own garage,
exactly,
then go get the acoustic kit.
That's it. We were smart, and that's where they do their homeschool and everything. But you're totally right, though. It's like I can't remember. I think it was the James Brown movie. Came out like 5-10 years ago or something. But my favorite scene in that movie is when James Brown goes around to his band, and it's not vibing. It's not working. Yeah. He goes up to the guitar player. He's like, see that instrument you're holding? That's a drum. See that instrument you're playing on the keyboard? That's a drum.
Yeah.
See that trumpet? That's a drum. If you play everything like it's a drum, the rhythm is what endears people to it. Like, no matter what instrument you're playing, it doesn't matter what notes you're playing.
That's right.
We talk about that in songwriting. Is a lot of the time to come up with something that's like a catchy hook, which you're great at.
Thanks.
It's less about the notes that you use and more about the rhythm.
Yeah, I totally agree. Hook, melody, all of that doesn't work if it doesn't have a good rhythm behind it.
Yeah. So that's awesome that's how you started. And I love the encyclopedias. We'll definitely take a picture if you have one from the past.
We should have put that on the record.
Yeah.
Should have got some encyclopedias on there.
We still got time. Sorry, label. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey? I mean, obviously between that and, starting Solomon's Porch, which turned into I Am They, was I'm sure quite a journey.
Oh my gosh.
What did that look like?
Yeah, you got to stop me too if I get too far, because I never know quite where to start on the journey, we started as what was literally supposed to be one night of worship. We had not enough people in one church to put together like a functioning band. So we had to reach out to other churches. This was back in Carson City, Nevada. So we brought in 5 different people from 5 different churches, or 6 different people, 5 different churches, came together, put a band together, and hosted one night of worship, and people turned up, and that just we were surprised. For us, it was a huge showing of 300 people, in our small town. But that thing just kept growing, and then we had a local promoter, took interest or whatever, came to some of those nights. He ended up being our first manager, but asked us if we wanted to open for Matthew West, and that was our very first gig. Was opening for Matthew.
No pressure.
Reno, Nevada. Yeah, we're we should probably have a band name.
Yeah.
We wrote songs for that, and that was that, because initially we were just leading worship together, Christian karaoke, church does. And then we started writing more, just in that kind of vein. Songs to God, as opposed to crappy songs for your girlfriend. And and so that set us on course. We played our festival later on called Spirit West Coast in California, and we won this Battle of the Bands kind of thing that sent us to Nashville for the first time. And Nashville was not on my radar to visit, let alone to live here and whatever, all the stuff that happened. Now we're living here, but we went to Nashville. We recorded a song with a producer in Nashville, which we were pumped about. His name was Billy Smiley, And
what's hilarious for our listeners is that literally, like, on the other side of this wall, I am not lying, Billy Smiley is in that room.
Right
there.
Dude, okay.
Is that the craziest thing?
We have to get to some of this stuff because
I'm jumping in. But
everything has come full circle.
It really has.
And that by itself, the fact that you are called Full Circle.
Yeah.
Just so crazy.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, Billy. No, I totally. It was weird to have Billy coming in, every other day or whatever while we're tracking the record and like, just crazy. But yeah, he did the very first song and he was like, "Hey guys, I love this song. Can I send it to some friends?" And we were like, didn't know what he meant by that at all. So we're just like out sightseeing Nashville and like going to the different hot spots. And then all of a sudden we end up getting calls from like his friends ended up being the 5 major record labels. So then we got, long story short, we ended up getting a couple offers from those labels, signed with the label here in Nashville and with Sony Provident in 2013. Tracked a record in 2014. Started touring that record in 2015 for the very first time in a Chevy van and a trailer and a 2-wheel drive Chevy van. So that got crazy over the course of the next couple years as we just started building and growing and doing the thing. So we were all like,
I love that you mentioned that it was 2-wheel drive.
Just because, it got crazy. Some of those years we had.
If you're pulling a trailer with a 2-wheel drive in the mountains, that's just not generally go super well.
Snowmageddon. Do you remember when that went down? Like out here in the Midwest, it was
What year was that?
I think it was 2016, maybe. It was like very early on. I
think I vaguely remember it. Yeah.
In our touring experience, or 2017, but it was like. I just remember we like had chains on the back of our, on our 2 wheels that were working, and then like there's feet of snow everywhere. It was 2015 because it was like our first tour.
Yeah.
We were doing Rock and Worship Roadshow.
Oh yeah.
And we're following semis. That was like the most hardcore touring experience we've ever had. We're following the buses and semis or whatever that are part of the tour. We weren't in a tour bus.
Yeah.
We were driving ourselves.
Them driving down the road. Hey, they're sleeping great right now.
So we'd have a show at night, like in whatever stadium. We would wrap everything up. Everybody, like the drivers are sleeping, right, in their hotel rooms, the semi-drivers or whatever. And we would have to wait for those rooms to open up, which would be like 1 a.m. or whatever. So then all the regular bands... The regular bands would get on their buses and go to sleep, and we would wait for those rooms to open. Then we would go into those used hotel rooms and sleep on. And we had like all of those people like labeled out, like the drivers. Yeah. There was like hairy guy.
Yeah.
There was like pizza guy.
Somehow they always use all the towels too.
Oh yeah, no towels left. It was so gross. So we would get a few hours night sleep, and then we would have to wake up and then drive ourselves, like catch up with the tour and show up and then play the gig. But yeah, it got crazy on. We had our stuff broken into somewhere in Washington. So like the tour like got around us and like chipped in, got all our stuff back.
Wow. Like found it or like bought
bought it. Yeah. Like,
wow.
Were giving us in-ears and stuff like that.
That's amazing.
It was incredible.
Bummer that happened, though. That's crazy.
Yeah. So it wouldn't have been that year then. Snowmageddon hit like the next year but there were like jackknife semis everywhere on the highway. We were like, you had to try and stay in the lanes or the tire impressions, of the car in front of you. Yeah. And we like pulled into this hotel, I remember, like Motel 6 or whatever, and we had busted one of our chains. So we were down to one chain, and then that chain busted like as we were pulling into the lot of this hotel. So I remember also going into like a Walmart and asking for chains because we busted one, and they were like, he was like, chains? Yeah, you can go, like, right here at the cabinet. He like pointed to the like chain, like necklace chains.
Oh,
or whatever. Like nobody knows what chains are out here. Like I guess that's a West Coast thing. I don't know. But
well, my wife and all the Swedes, the Scandinavians, they're laughing right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've been through the ringer. Just as a band, we've had 3 of our 6 original people are gone or replaced now. So we have 5 people in our band now, and 2 of the 3, we have 3 lead singers. I'm one, and we have 2 others, a guy and a girl. And so the 2 other original peeps are gone. And that was just, really, really tough. Like, if I'm honest, like, I was co-founder of the band. Yeah. But I felt like I was the least. I've always felt like I was the, like, God, what am I doing here? Like I never felt like, I'm one of those people that's like never would have imagined myself in music, in any capacity. Like, I loved it, but like
doing it as a career.
Yeah. So here I am, but I think by the grace of God and just like the somehow that was God's will on my life, and I've found it and leaned into it and all of that. But when we had the 2 main singers, I would say, in the band gone, it was, and every time it was like, are we still going to be a band tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like,
well, man, props to you for not throwing in the towel. I know from personal experience, being in a band is hard. It's harder work than most people can even fathom. I mean, you touched on a little bit of it, the touring side, which, at the time of recording this, we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so it looks a little bit different. But it will start back up again, and bands will be having to hit the road.
Even COVID was hard in its own right. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, it was hard before, and this is another type of hardness with all the touring vanishing. That's like the livelihood. So,
right.
So yeah, props to you for sticking through it, man. I know the personal dynamics, the not sleeping, the sharing rooms with semi-drivers. Like, that's the stuff that people, when they hear a song on the radio, their mind does not connect. Oh, to get to that point, they had to drive 300 days out of the year and play this show to nobody and then set up their own stuff, tear it down. Like, there's just so much that goes into it. So what in those seasons was it that kind of kept you guys pushing through, whether it be band members quitting or what kept you guys
grounded? And my wife and I, we were like, newlyweds when like I decided to quit my day job and like take on music. She was pregnant. My wife got pregnant with our first child. Like,
that's good timing.
Real quick.
Really good timing.
Yeah.
What is
man? And again, like, as far as that goes into like the journey, again, like how deep it goes, that's always been really interesting. I don't know if I've ever said this before, but we, so my dad growing up, like my parents split. My dad was, they found each other in ministry, and part of their splitting was like, my dad was just gung ho in ministry and feeling like this is where God is leading us. This is where God is leading us. Let's go do this. Let's do that. And that was really hard on my mom. And so for me, it was like God set me up. Like, that's how it felt to just be like, how are you going to do this? Because here I am, like, let's go towards this ministry or whatever. But I just had to be very intentional, because I'm like, man, I'm newly married, new kid on the way, and God, you are asking me to do the hardest thing that I could do. It felt like the Abraham, Isaac, like putting it all on the altar. because I was like, I started early working for the state, and that's what I did before. For over 10 years, I worked for the state of Nevada, working in water resources, and I was doing that, and I could have retired early. I was all set up for that, had the same dollars and cents every other week. I get my paycheck, I bought a house early, everything was great and set up. And like I said, then God was like, are you going to follow me in this? And my wife and I just never could shake the fact. We'd go to sushi and sit across from the table and just be like, we'd pray and fast, or just like, God, what do you want us to do? And we'd stay separate in that, and then we'd come together, over the table and just be like, what do you think? What was God speaking to you? And it was always like, he's still calling us forward. He's still calling us towards this thing. Wow. And so sounds like she was pretty fully on board the entire time. Yeah, totally. It was like, as hard as it was for us, she was fully committed to really obedience. And when you feel like you hear God in something, any other answer is blatant disobedience, and you're like, I can't go there. It just didn't sit right with us. So we went after it, man. And it was really hard. Quitting my job. I would use all of my leave time. I'd be working. Literally, I would work overnight. And props to my boss, because I had awesome bosses that were like believers, and one of them wasn't a believer, but he would let me work overnight, and I would just stay in the office and scan stuff and whatever I was doing through the night, so I could earn the time to go to Nashville and whatever we were doing with the record label at that time, write songs or whatever it was. But
so you've put in the time. You've done paid the dues, so to speak.
Any new person though that's come into the band, like I've said, we've had a few people change. That has always been the core question for them. I've always said is God calling you to do this? We go out and you can scout people, you can find people, you can put them through the your filter of questions of is it the right fit? But at the end of the day, did God bring you here, and is this where God wants you to be? And do you know that? Because if you haven't heard, for our band, for me, as whatever leader of the band, I just want to know that this person feels that their anchor is the call of God on their life. Because I'm like, you're gonna come to the place where it doesn't make sense, where it's hard, where it's like, what am I doing here? Where I'm frustrated about this, that, or the other thing. And if you don't have your anchor set deeper, then this is cool, and I want to be in a band, and we get to travel or tour or whatever it is. That wouldn't be enough. Yeah. So that's what it has been for me, and I know for a lot of us in our band. So yeah, praise God, man. We're still here, better than ever now, though.
That's awesome. Man, I'd love to hear just even a little bit. You've kind of been talking about it throughout, but what I want to hear a bit of your testimony. I mean, it sounds like you grew up in church, in a family that was pretty rooted in faith, and it sounds like you've just kind of stayed the course. Can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. We my roots actually, both of my parents again met in ministry, were believers, but ended up, I shared a little bit about how there's conflict and some other things that were going on. Long story short, my parents ended up divorced. That was a very kind of ugly thing and was very difficult. So I grew up living with my mom, having visitation with my dad, and it was supervised visitation. So that was really weird and hard on both sides. And then with my mom, even at times we were living with people in our church, and I was sleeping on the couch, her in a living room somewhere, and yeah, and then my mom was pregnant with my little sister. I was 5 years old. Actually, the day that my mom gave birth to my little sister, I had an appendicitis. So she was in the hospital, obviously, giving birth. And
how old were you?
I was 5.
Jeez, man.
And then over the phone, she hears me on the other side screaming. The doctor actually heard me screaming through the phone and was like, "You need to get him into the doctor." It turns out I would have died that day had they not got me in. Like my appendix burst. There was like gangrene everywhere, whatever. And
jeez. So
God spared my life. It all worked out. Everybody lived.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Fast forward. I grew up with my mom. My mom homeschooled me. I hung out there. My mom had a awesome faith in the Lord. And yeah, just raised me. Like I said, one of the most memorable things is just like my mom's faithfulness to just have like these devotions every day that I was a part of, and she'd make it.
That's awesome.
She'd put music in that, and it just like gave me that was how I learned how to put God's word in my heart, was via song. And she would make up all these funny jingles that literally I can remember to this day of how I remembered scriptures or whatever. And so yeah, that was really influential and huge in my life. And so I ended up I gave my life to the Lord as a youngster, actually at a Billy Graham crusade.
Oh wow. That's awesome.
So yeah, my mom went down with me and prayed, and so that was super cool. And then I got involved in youth group. Young age, I started playing drums in the church band and stuff like that. And always had, that was like my friend circles, all of that. So God, I don't know how you say it, sheltered me. I never got I never went into all of the party. Like I never was interested in drugs, drinking, party, like that kind of thing. It was great because I had friends in that world, but everybody like respected me as like the guy who didn't want to do that, or like who wasn't swearing or who wasn't sleeping with whoever. Yeah. And so, man, yeah, I was just the grace of God over my life during that time. And
man, I want to ask you about that too, because I think one of the things that I am particularly passionate about is, and it sounded like you were able to like maintain your friend group and stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm always passionate about is how to not, this sounds weird to say it this way, but how to make Christianity not weird.
Yeah. Right.
Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Like there's just so much craziness that goes with it, and with really any faith for that matter, for for people listening that are Catholic or whatever, that's one of the things that, because we've all been to those, we've seen the televangelists on TV that are, we've seen all the farting preacher videos and all the weird stuff that that goes with it, and there's just so much weirdness out there. Right. And that's one of the things that I've loved about being able to work in a lot of Christian music, and trying to make something that's relevant and not just this little sub niche of music that only these kind of weird people, I'm using the word weird and it's the wrong word, but just a unique,
not all the time,
unique, not I don't know. The Bible talks about being in the world but not of the world. I think a lot of Christianity doesn't do a great job of that.
Yeah,
it's more in the world and in itself, or not in the world and not of the world would be a better way to put it. So, man, I just would love to hear your perspective on that, because just you sharing about growing up and having all the friends that were in the drugs and drinking and things. That's I relate to that, because I never quite sowed my wild oats, so to speak, like that either. So, how do you think about that with your faith?
Yeah, and I
or
have
do you at all?
Oh yeah. I have 2 kids now, so I just think when kids come along, it like you start thinking about that for them, and how do I make this, how can I, it's just, when you said how to, kind of how do we make it not weird, I just think make it real, like it's as short and as easy as that. I remember my kids turning the corner to church back in the day, and my son at least, and he would start crying, when we'd turn that corner and like start going towards church, and it was just like, remember being like, this isn't how I want my son to know the Lord and like what his faith to look like. And, now, we're living here, me and you go to the same church actually. Yeah. And it's awesome because my son like loves church and it's real for him. Like it wasn't something that was just like being spoke at him or like, whatever, he wasn't getting talked at.
Yeah, it wasn't like brainwashing.
Fill out this paper. Yeah, it was just like it's real for him, and so he wants to pray for that kid over there on the playground who's sick, or he'll like he understands the love of God. He understands the power of the Holy Spirit working in his life, and I think that's just, for me, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, obviously here, but it's just like, how is that really impacting me, and how does that in turn, freely you have received, now freely to give, like how can I employ that in my life and actually put that into action? And so for me, that all came around like actually doing stuff for God, not just like it just being about me, but it being more about other people and letting God, work through me, and letting being hands and feet in the world. And so,
well, man, one of the things that has helped me, and I'll just kind of, that's a great answer. Thank you for going there with me. I know it's a little bit of an odd question.
I love it.
But one of the things that's helped me over the years is when you're trying to weigh out this is a question that we're all asking all the time: what's real, what's fake, what's not real, what's fake. And I think it was my old pastor when I was just asking about all healings and all this stuff, and like there are times, probably unfortunately more often than not, where it's just the person trying to get attention, or them just being crazy, or maybe they're like a new believer and they all of a sudden think they're like in X-Men or something, and they can like see through walls and touch people, and then it's
which I think is both sometimes beautiful and sometimes like, okay, go sit down.
Yeah, you're scaring people. You're scaring people. So I was just talking about that, and he was like, man, really the best test that I know of is really two questions. Number one, is there confusion or is there clarity? And then number two, is the attention being drawn to the person, or is it being pointed back to God?
Yeah.
And that's helped me navigate through so much of the BS, or what, for lack of a better term, of, because you can just tell that. Nobody has to, they don't have to be having a spotlight shown on them. You kind of can just sense it. And maybe that's a simplistic way of thinking about it, but
no, man, I think that's really good. And I think for me also, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. Like, I remember, because I've been, man, on both, as far as I am now personally non-denominational, whatever, but I've been a part of various denominations and that kind of thing through the years myself. And I've sat in very like structured, reading straight through the Bible kind of churches, but I've also been part of like the other side where they're like waving, like like laying down fake jewelry on the floor and like doing like the full, like getting weird on the weird side of things. And so the don't throw the baby out with the bathwater thing for me has been really important, because it allows God to just, do what he's going to do, and me not put limitations on that. So when you say the two things being clarity or confusion, I think that to a certain extent, like for me, because I just think if you look back in Scripture, like the prophets, Jesus himself, like the apostles, did some really weird things that probably there were a lot of confused people like, okay, like, what are you doing with the, can we not be praying over the dead people, like, just whatever, or Elisha and the bones and, like, whatever. There's a lot of crazy stuff that can be like, this is too far, you're taking it too far kind of thing. And I don't want to be that person for God. But, like, 100% on the second one being like, is this for people or is this for the glory of God? Like, that has been for sure, like, a litmus test for me of just, like, there's so many people, unfortunately, in ministries and pastors and whatever. And even some of those, like, start really good. And, like, I think it's, like, all for, like, pointing to Jesus. And then, give it time, and people are people, and it just gets ugly, and there's power, and there's money, and there's whatever.
Yeah,
and then
it's influence.
Yeah, and then it just, like, sucks them in, and it stops being about God, and it starts being about people.
Yeah.
And then there it goes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. I think for me, I guess it's just there's an analytical side of my brain where it's maybe it's a more personal thing than just a general thing. I'm not saying that should be the way everybody looks at it. It's more just for me. I know for myself, there's been moments in my life when somebody comes up and gives you a word or lays hands on you and, heals you or whatever. And I'm just confused or whatever. It just feels like something's not right here. But there have been times when people have told me things that they maybe shouldn't know, like just, words that are so specific that I'm like, okay, there's perfect clarity there. That could only be from God. So I think totally just to clarify, that's sort of what I'm meaning there. And man, thanks for going there with me for a second.
I love it.
Want to get back to your music career.
Yeah.
How did your dream for your life, maybe in your teenage years or kind of coming up doing, playing in youth group bands and stuff, how did it differ from the life that you're currently living? Or is it really similar? Like, are there...
Man, well, youth group bands, I will say there was a time when I was in high school where I what were the bands? We were doing like Dream Theater songs and like,
What youth group were you going to that kids could play Dream Theater songs?
Wait, so that wasn't the youth group, but that was like, some high school buddies, and I was the drummer, and we did like talent shows and stuff like that. But that was like my first band, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the difference between then and now, I guess.
Or maybe a better way to ask it might be your perception of what being a musician looks like versus like what it actually is.
Yeah, well, I mean, back then you're not trying to. Now it requires your whole, like, everything, and so we're trying to live, and I have a family, and all of us have families, or we're adults now. So it's like, I guess. A big part of it now is that I don't live with my parents, and none of us do. Yeah. And so that's just, I guess, what a big responsibility that you walk into as an adult. So with that, you're trying to pay bills, but also trying to, just continue ministry. And I really at the root of that, again, like, you can start to take your eyes off of like the kingdom of God and put it on what's going on right here in front of you, and you're building your own kingdom and whatever. And that was another thing that got me into doing what I'm doing now. Is I sat again in a cubicle for over 10 years going like, God, this is really cool. I could see the benefits of it, and that's what kept me there for that long. But I was also like aching, like my soul was aching, like, God, please get me out of these cubicle walls. Like, I don't belong in front of this computer filling out Excel sheets and, handing in my goldenrod, documents or whatever to Claire down the aisle. Like, this isn't what I was made for. And so I just wanted to do something that had an eternal value to it, like eternal value. And I think that now is just as important as then, is like do something like with eternal value, because it's not only going to like bring satisfaction to your soul, but it's also going to bless others, and it's also going to grow like what you're doing. Like you'll be provided for, you'll be taken care of. So we've just tried to keep the main thing the main thing. You know, we didn't intend on being a band, so I think that's helped us in certain. It's made it hard in certain ways, because we're like, well, we don't know what we're doing. But it's also like made it good in other ways, because we can just go back to what we were doing that first night of like, let's get people together and let's worship the Lord and let's be there for each other. And that's essentially what we do. So
yeah, it's well said, very well said. Who is maybe it could be currently or just in general in your career, but who is your biggest inspiration?
Oh man. So there are some people that just stand out in my mind. I'll just kind of go off the top, but Matt Redman is somebody that always just comes to mind musically for me, and lyrically, and like I love old people. So there's just something about like the depth of those wells that I just love to I love staying in a learner mindset. Like I'm always learning. And the people I learn the most from usually I feel are older folks. And I feel like some of those people aren't maybe old in age, but they're old souls. And I think Matt Redman has kind of been one of those people. Just early on, I was like, wow, there's something about the depth of the lyrics that he's writing that just like means something. Like it just grabs me like in my soul. So he was really influential for me. And then
shout out to Matt Redman. He actually he was on our podcast.
Really?
People can go to the description and find a link for the episode. It just the way he thinks about things. I gotta totally agree with you. Yeah. It's another planet, quite literally.
Yeah, he's kind of like a theologian / astronaut. Musical. He's awesome, man. I would love to meet him one day. That's super cool. You got to.
That's awesome.
But yeah, him. Reeve Carney, John Mayer, like those guys also were really Brooke Frazier. Like those people were very. I just love their songwriting. I'm like, they are outside of the box thinkers, and just kind of blew my mind in different
Who was the first
ways.
one that you mentioned?
Reeve Carney of the band Carney. Or he was also like guitar player for Johnny Lang, like way back when.
I gotta check that out. We'll put that in the show notes.
Go check him out. He's just an incredible human anyways. Like him and his brother, check out Zane Carney, because he's like one of the best guitar players I've ever seen in my life. But Reeve is like one of the best songwriters. He's just incredible songwriter. So, and really unique and incredible voice. Anyway, him and you wouldn't listen to his music, by the way, I don't think, and be like, oh yeah, you get you're inspired, influenced by him.
Yeah.
But anyway, the songs I wrote back when and now are like, you wouldn't think I'm the same person either. Like I love being just really diverse in the way that we write and stuff. But
there's some foundation that was built there though.
For sure. Yeah. So him, and then people like Ravi Zacharias just passed away. Man, he was like, I cried when I found out that he died, because it was just like one of those, I got saved at a Billy Graham crusade. It was just one of those people that like has spoke to me in such a profound way, and a lot of those spiritual questions that you ask along the journey, even questions we're probably still asking ourselves. Ravi is one of those minds that's just like you can go back to. Like I encourage anybody out there, whether you're in faith or, you know, don't care about God or whatever, or have walked away from faith or anything like that, like, go check out Ravi Zacharias. He's just like, I think, such a
brilliant,
incredible grace and truth. And I've just always, like, he brings truth, but he does it in such a loving and graceful way, meets people where they're at. So, yeah, those are just some people that really stand out to me.
Well said. So, what's behind the name I Am They? For
sure, besides the bad grammar. We come from Nevada, man. What do you expect? We got it from John 17, and throughout that chapter, throughout that passage, Jesus is praying for his disciples. And you're talking about, you know, being in the world, not of the world. That's that same chapter where Jesus says that. And so, and then he also says that they would be one, just as you and I are one. And so he's referring to his disciples as they throughout that passage as he's praying for them, and really, like, laying out an identity for, like, us as believers. And so I Am They is personalizing that and just taking ownership of that. And we've always just said, like, the ministry means more than the music, and, like, it's more about the lives that we live than the songs that we sing. And I Am They just, it speaks to that. And it's not just something, it's not a band name, it's not just for us on the stage, but it's we love that it's just all inclusive. Like, it's everybody, you know. If you're in Christ, you can say I am they and just, like, claim that identity. And so it's always been really good to, like, throughout the years, to go back to the passage, like, to have kind of like something you could go back to and read through and be like, there it is, like, that's what we aim at.
That's your North Star.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and I feel like we've been learning that identity, like, more and more through the years. Like, we wouldn't have, you know, it's kind of like in scripture where you see, like, people have names and they mean a certain thing, and then, like, you watch their journey and you're like, oh, cool, like, it's cool how those two things correlate.
Yeah.
That's just how it's been for us, where we're like, I don't think we knew the fullness of what we were stepping into or naming ourselves or whatever, but just our identity as they, and what that means to, like, the plural of us. Even, like, it's not just a singular identity thing, but it's like, it's all of us, and each one of us in the band is very different. We're all, like, a different Enneagram number. We're all a different whatever. Like, we all have different personalities. We think differently. Even, like, the way we walk out our faith is, you know, can look differently sometimes, in the way we think about, you know, politics or this or that. And that can be challenging. But I think that is beautiful, and has been for us, because we've learned that, like, Jesus knew that when he was talking about they in that passage, and when he said that they would be one, and he called us to unity, like, he knew that he made us all different, but he still called us to unity. And so we've been learning how to do that over the course of the last 10 years. So
yeah, so good, man. And that kind of leads me to the next question is, you know, you mentioned earlier that it's 3 out of 6 of the original band members are there today, and you guys are a 5-piece now.
Actually, 2.
2, okay.
2, yeah.
2 out of 6, okay. So there you go. Which makes this question even more relevant. How have you adapted to band member changes? I mean, that's a crazy thing. I know from having been there. How do you? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's really summing up in one word. On both sides, man. It's like, just because I've been there longer, that's my perspective, is just because I've been there longer doesn't make me more important, doesn't make my opinion greater than somebody else's. You know, just really loving each other like you want to be loved, and, you know, those things that you learn growing up, I guess. Treat people the way you want to be treated, and love people with the same love that you want to get back, and respect people and speak into people and believe in people. Even that's been something that's been really big actually in my world, is just like speak into somebody, even my kids, like better than who they are right now, or whatever, or greater than maybe they're treating you right now, or that kind of thing. Like, talk at them like they're the best thing in the world and they're your best friend, and almost speak into them the things that you want to see come to life in them. And I think over time, like, you see a lot of that actually take form and take shape.
Man, that's such a huge... I'm really glad you brought that up, and this is obviously a bigger discussion than just music, but so much of the chaos that's going on in the world today, you know, you can turn on the news and there's a new hate crime that happens every day. And I love this idea of, like, okay, there are groups of people that have drawn circles around themselves, and that's them. It's us and them. The best way to overcome that isn't by trying to fight through that circle, but it's by drawing a bigger circle around both of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's not only just a kingdom thing, it's just a great way to live by.
Yeah.
That you're just really, all you're doing is you're being generous with your mindset and your mentality and your interpretation of somebody else. If they said something that you could interpret as being a threat or harmful or mean or whatever, I'm going to choose to look at that like, you know what, this person's probably having a bad day.
Yeah. Or,
you know, I just think so many problems could be solved by that.
Yeah, totally. We have kind of, it's not a rule, but it's just like a thing that we've taught our kids, is just like everybody on the playground is a friend. Like, we call them friends, and it doesn't matter how mean they have been, or what they're doing to somebody else, or what they look like, or, you know, whatever it may be, like the little dividing things. Like, my kids always, you know, would come back from Chick-fil-A, back when we could go inside Chick-fil-A.
Exactly.
Or whatever. And they'd be like,
looking forward to that.
Yeah, I got to play with 3 friends, you know, in Chick-fil-A or whatever. And like that kind of, you know, some kids just see the world that way anyway, but it's really putting on that lens and just being like, man, what if we just saw each other? That's another thing that was really important for me growing up. I'd say, like, I learned, kind of took this to heart the end of my teenage years. This sounds really weird too, now that I'm saying it out loud, but seeing people like babies, like as they were babies, like if I look at you as a giant bearded baby.
There you go.
There you go.
That's a way to look at it.
But one, sometimes it does make you laugh, but I learned that on the streets of San Francisco doing ministry to homeless people. And they, like, have urine on themselves, and they are like whatever, they're just nasty, and they're the outcast, you know. And I would look at that person who hasn't showered in God knows how long and smells to high heaven, and just see them as a baby, a fresh new life coming into this world. And that totally changed, like, how I speak to them and how I value them, and understanding that we all carry that. We've been made in the image of God, and we carry that kind of value. So I think that's really important. Like you said, just the days that we live in, it's like recognizing people that way, and treating people that way.
Man, so good. There's a lot of directions we could go off on this, but I know that you guys are busy finishing. Well, the new record's finished, but you're gearing up towards releasing it. So I'm grateful for the time you've given us today. But I just kind of have a few closing questions before we get to our lightning round and our deep dive, which we're going to be talking about the making of Faithful God, about your newest record. So, it's so evident that you have a very big heart for ministry, and the question I would ask is it a challenge to go out and feel like you're promoting an album or something that you're doing with an album that's geared towards worship and ministry, or how do you kind of think about that, the balance of, like, you got to do marketing. Obviously, people won't hear about it if it's not well marketed.
Yeah.
But how do you think about that, like with this whole idea of self-promotion or whatever it is, and kind of balancing that with it being a ministry?
I just lean into the ministry side of it personally. I love writing songs, and I love ministry. And the other stuff I've leave to other people, so you can have them on and ask them how they do. No, yeah. I get it. I mean, I definitely, I was asking as I came in today, like, when does the record come out? Like, I was asking our managers, because I just don't have a great, like, storehouse for all of those kind of things. And I actually, I don't have an Instagram anymore. I live about an hour outside of town. You can just kind of see, like, what my life kind of looks like. The
band has an Instagram, though.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So it's been awesome, man, to have a record label, and they do what they do to promote that and send that all over the world. And but to me, again, it's like that's how the ministry gets out. And that was originally, I said we got a couple offers or whatever. That was something that really stood out to us when we met our A&R guy Blaine at Sony Provident. It felt like everything was like he was ministry minded, and that really stood out to me and to us. Was like, this guy understands, like, where we come from and what we're about. And it's not about, we sat in the room with people that, like, God bless them, they're probably, like, still doing ministry. They probably still love Jesus. I'm not saying they don't. We sat in the room with people that were like, how many Instagram followers do you have, or how many people do you have on Facebook, or what do the numbers look like? Do you have any, like, show me your accolades, show me what you've done.
Sure.
And number one, we didn't really have any of that.
Yeah.
And two, it just wasn't in our heart. Like, it wasn't what we wanted to.
It's not why you're doing it.
Yeah. And so I think it just has to start with ministry. And when Blaine was like, we want to get behind what you guys have going on, in that, like, he came out to a worship night and just like was there and participated and was like, I just love what's happening in this room. And, like, he's like, I just want to get behind that. And so, and push that forward. We're like, yeah, let's do that. So I think whatever pushes the ministry forward, that's probably a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Is just, again, keep the main thing to me, like, keep your eyes on Jesus and what can push the ministry forward. How can we do that? And then there are ways that we can do that through these different various channels, as you know, and you are very good at it. So,
well, I'm learning, trying to learn. Man, so good. Let's leave it at that, and then we'll jump into our lightning round. For our listeners who would like to check out your music and find out more about you and the band, where can they go?
IamThey.com.
IamThey.com, and we will make sure to link to it, as well as the new album, which we are going to be doing our deep dive. If anybody wants to deep dive with me into the making of the new record with Matt, I'm actually interested to hear this part because we made it together. And so this is like,
so pumped.
He's going to come on and say, hey, we loved it except for the producers. It was great except for that.
Oh, whatever, man. That was the best part.
That's awesome.
That's why we're here.
So we are going to do a deep dive on that. If you want to check that out, go to madeitmusic.com, and you can check out the deep dive there. But, hey, let's jump into the lightning round. Are you ready?
I don't know if I am. Let's do it.
All right.
We'll find out.
Who was your favorite Christian artist when you were growing up?
Michael W. Smith.
If you could star in any movie, what character would you play
MWS.
and why?
Any movie that already existed?
Or that will be made. If you could star in any movie, what character would you play and why?
I'd be in Space Jam, and I'd be one of the monsters, so I could destroy Michael Jordan. I don't know.
Well said. Something on your bucket.
Where that came from.
Yeah, hey, something on your bucket list that you haven't gotten to do yet.
Bucket list skydiving.
We got a plane waiting outside.
Let's go.
Favorite Bible verse?
Matthew 6:33, which is seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added. I think that speaks to a lot of what we've talked about, and just like how to prioritize your life. And the hard thing about this life is like trying to prioritize and trying to put it in order that is satisfying for you, but also like cares for your family and all of it's just a good life verse. And it has always been the thing, like when you talk about the anchor and like the thing to go back to, and on my worst days, like what can I zero in on? Like I can just go back to that verse and be like, hey, where is God in this? Seek first that, and don't worry about the finances. Don't worry about like all of this. Don't worry about the fact that I don't have Wi-Fi or cell service at my house. Like just those things will find their way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And lastly, what was your first concert?
Matthew West was. Yeah. Well, no, that was our first. So that was our first. That was our first show as a band.
Concert.
Yeah.
What was your first
concert? Was, I think, Plank Eye.
Oh yeah.
You remember Plank Eye?
I absolutely do.
Goodbye.
Back in the day.
Oh man, Carson City in the park. They headlined, and that was it.
Man, I gotta go back and listen to that.
I think after that it was Delirious.
Okay, that'd been a good show.
Oh man, legends.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Matt, this has been absolutely awesome. Again, people can check out I Am They at iamthey.com and stick around with us. Meaning head over to madeitmusic.com if you want to check out the deep dive of how we made the new record together, Faithful God, which you should also check out. What's up? Thank you for watching the Made It in Music podcast Season 3. If you want to check out any of the other episodes from Season 3, click up here. And we talk in the show about these really cool deep dives with all this extra bonus content. And if you want access to all of those, click here.